Hi everybody, welcome back to our live election results coverage here at 3 News. I'm Stephanie Haney. I'm here with my co-anchor Dave DeNatale.
We are back here for our final election update as we head into what's next at 11 o'clock on 3 News. We are getting more and more election results coming in at wkyc.com/elections. And you know, some things have been declared and called. Some things are still pending, but I think now, Stephanie, as we've been doing this for a couple of hours now, I think we kind of can be comfortable with some of the results that are coming in, and some things are still maybe a little too close to call or still wait for some precincts to check in. But I think on some of those hot button issues that we talked with Tom Beres about, and Tom will join us here in a few minutes for perspective, I think we have an idea now of how some of the voting is going to be turning out.
We do, and some of them where we do have a more definite response, we're also very close, but turned definitely one way, and we'll get to that here in a little bit for you. Here in Cuyahoga County, we've got 31.2 precincts reporting. Voter turnout of about 13.3% right now. Still waiting to see how many people come out overall in the end, but we do have some of those results, and we can tell you how things are looking right now, particularly on issue 6, the issue with the sheriff and the hiring, firing of the sheriff and how that's looking. So right now, we've got 75.52% people yes for having some more oversight with how the sheriff is hired and fired here in Cuyahoga County, and 24.48% against it. So that one's looking pretty good.
Yeah, 75 to 25%. And you know, we talked with Tom earlier about the importance. It's to not only give the sheriff some powers and feeling like the sheriff, whoever the Cuyahoga County sheriff eventually permanently will have some powers, but it also strengthens the Cuyahoga County Council in terms of their ability to sign off on who the sheriff is going to be, and to be able to sign off if termination becomes a part of the issue. So that looks like that's going to pass pretty handily here tonight.
Looking at issue number 3, and that was the issue of more funding for Cuyahoga County Community College District Tri-C. Also looking pretty good there right now. We've got about 62% in favor to about 38% opposed.
It's going to be, you know, the college is going to work out pretty well, I think, tonight. But as when we get to school levies here in a few minutes, not quite as, if you're somebody that's, you know, out there trying to hopefully, you know, get your school levy passed. It was a tough night to a lot of communities in all across really Northeast Ohio, but not for Tri-C. At least not the way it's looking right now. Not
for Tri-C. And when we're talking about how people are running for office, we looked at issue 20 here in Cuyahoga County, and that's the requirement of living here for 12 months, being an elector before you can run for city office. Also looking like that's got a good chance of passing here in Cuyahoga County. And the numbers that we have in for that right now are 83% in favor, 17% opposed.
Yeah, I mean, you look at issues 20, 21, and 22, as Tyler has it on the screen now. I think Tom used it perfectly a few minutes ago. That it's just, you know, when we had him on the 9 o'clock hour, it just seems like all were pretty sensible measures, and they were pretty sensibly passed by the voters of Cleveland and in the county in particular. So certainly some transparency, I think, is going to, and that may be the word of the night. We'll get Tom up here for perspective in a couple minutes. I think transparency in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County might be one of the big takeaways, I think, from tonight.
I think that's a really good point, especially looking at issue 26, the issue of the Cleveland Heights proposal for electing a mayor, having that person be directly answerable to the people. We've got about 60% people in favor of that, 40% opposed. That one's a little bit closer than some of the earlier ones we've seen.
The times, they may be a-changing. I mean, it's been 100 years or so without a mayor that's been elected by the people in Cleveland Heights, barring a late surge. And just to point out, the election of a mayor in Cleveland Heights would not begin until 2021. So essentially you have a year of transitioning, really 2 years of transitioning, and then in 2021, voters would finally get to go to the polls to elect a mayor in Cleveland Heights. One of the real signature communities on Cleveland's east side will maybe finally have an electable mayor. So it's going to be an interesting transition to that kind of government down the road.
That'll be an interesting change for that community. Now, when we talk about close close issues on the ballot. We talked about Lorain County and the proposed sensible marijuana ordinance in Amherst.
How close was it? I keep
close.
hitting refresh just in case there's any late votes. No, everything. 9 out of 9 precincts in. It's still official.
It's still official. So we had 48% people in favor of lessening the punishments for that amount of marijuana, less than half a pound of marijuana. 52% voted no, though. So looks like the status quo remains.
And I think the Amherst Police Department really getting out there in front of the issue and putting it out there, and not just saying, we're against this, but they really spelled it out in their Facebook post why they were against it, the reasons why it was a threat to how well or how poorly they would be able to do their jobs if it would pass. That, I think, carried some weight with voters in Amherst. So
they apparently made a compelling case because the people turned it down.
People turned it down. We said one of the other things tonight, although we're not electing president tonight, we're not electing members of Congress tonight, mayors are being elected tonight in several communities around Northeast Ohio. The ones that weren't having, the 17 that weren't unopposed tonight, there were a few that we were going to be watching tonight, including in the city of Akron.
Yes, in the city of Akron, it looks like Mayor Dan Horrigan will remain. He did win his second term against Republican challenger Josh Sines by a pretty big margin. Right now we have the vote totals as a little over 19,000 for Mayor Horrigan and just under 6,000 for Sines.
So, I mean, this is now a second term, and, I think Dan Horrigan can now just be able to breathe a sigh and it's like, okay, I've had the job, I've been elected, and now I can really go to work and start a second term the way I want. Didn't see this one coming in the city of Elyria, Stephanie. Holly Brenda, the incumbent, trying to become a third-term mayor. She was running against a former 3-term mayor in Bill Grace and a relative unknown named Frank Whitfield. The relative unknown, according with 31 out of 31 precincts in Elyria, Frank Whitfield has gotten 3,837 votes. That's about 48% of the vote. Holly Brenda getting about 41% of the vote. So it looks like there's going to be a new mayor in the city of Elyria.
Apparently they were ready for some change in Elyria.
So that's our first big upset of the night when we looked at how things were going to shape out. It's going to be Frank Whitfield apparently as the new mayor of Elyria.
And as you said, Dino, at the beginning, it was not a good night for school levies across Northeast Ohio. We have some tough results coming in for a lot of places.
Yeah, looked at a number of communities. In Chardon, we talked about they wanted to, much as anything else, new buildings, renovate the football stadium. That apparently in Geauga County has gone down to defeat tonight. That was a 56 to 43% vote. In Willoughby Eastlake, a very proud school district in Lake County, that we talked about the importance. Had that failed, it would be a situation where amongst some of the cuts that have been thrown out there that have been suggested, it would be the elimination of middle school and freshman athletics. And that has apparently gone down to defeat tonight in Willoughby Eastlake. So I know a lot of parents and people out there are concerned that, how are these programs going to be cut? How's this going to happen? So that apparently has gone down to defeat tonight. North Ridgeville's school levy did not pass. Also, though, in Lorain County, Avon's and Columbia's both did pass. And last checking in Cuyahoga County, Euclid was losing, and so was Independence. So if you're doing the math at home, that's 5 out of 7, at least that we tracked, that either are losing or have already gone down to defeat tonight.
Tough night. We'll continue to watch those as they come in, and we'll have more on that on our website. You can check those real-time results at wkyc.com/elections. And now we'll have our political analyst Tom Beres join us to take a look ahead.
And again, I remind everybody that tonight at 11 on What's Next, Russ Mitchell and Sarah Shupin will have one Thomas Beres joining us. Tom, as you get situated here and join us, I kind of feel like from the issues that we talked about earlier in the evening, they were it went chalk, so to speak. Issue 6 in Cuyahoga County, the sheriff charter, that's going to pass, it looks like. The Cleveland charters are going to pass pretty easily, issues 20 and 22. And it looks like Tri-C is going to pass. It was a very, I think you put it earlier, a very sensible night by voters in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County.
And voters receptive to some change, also including the switch of government in Cleveland Heights. So, again, maybe voters thinking that there's a better way to do things, or these ideas are worth trying. Maybe turning the page back to the school levies you discussed. There hasn't been a lot of publicity about it, but the leaders of the state legislature are said to be contemplating a revised system of state school funding. You may recall that 3 different times the state Supreme Court has told the legislature this system is too dependent on property taxes.
Right.
Fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
Fix it. Fix it. And they've been sitting on their hands for all these years, and still hard to believe. If you or I were ordered by the Supreme Court to do something, it would be done by now, or we'd be sitting in jail.
We'd be working on it.
Right.
We'd for sure be working on it.
But again, perhaps some voters are holding out hope that maybe there'll be a new system that won't be so dependent on property taxes. Again, not being familiar with the individual strengths and weaknesses of all the systems that may have been defeated tonight.
But it goes to the point you said when we were talking about Tri-C, is that at some point, for some people in communities, they just say, "Hey, look, enough's enough. You have stretched me for everything I have. I can't give you anymore, the way things are."
Right. So there does appear to be at least an undercurrent of that in the outcomes of the school levy races.
Now, it's never quite too soon, or maybe it is quite too soon, but we're going to say that it's not right now, to look towards next year. Ohio is always a focal point for the upcoming national elections. What do you think some of the results that we've seen today, sort of looking towards next year, mean for us?
Well, I think turning the page and having this relatively peaceful, tranquil, not hostile, quiet election over, getting ready for the tsunami, big kahuna, whatever you want to call it, the main event coming next year in the presidential election. As you said, Ohio is always a very, very important state because it's picked the presidential winners all the way back to Lyndon Johnson.
Right.
No Republican has ever won the White House without carrying Ohio. Yeah. Say it with me now, we all know that. But I think Ohio's overall importance in this campaign is going to be somewhat diminished. You recall from the election last year where the Democrats made great strides and inroads in Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, and not so much here. Every single state office held by a Republican, with the exception of Sherrod Brown and 2 Supreme Court members. So I think the Republicans are still feeling like perhaps they have the upper hand here. I think the Democrats obviously think Ohio may be winnable by the fact that they chose Ohio to host one of their earliest debates. I think that was a statement that they still thought Ohio was in play. But I mean, there was a poll just released today by the New York Times of the 6 most important battleground states. That did not include Ohio. Ohio didn't even make the cut.
I agree with you. I feel like that nationally the perception is Ohio may as well be a red state. Ohio may as well just be a red state. It's no longer a swing state because, where it's more blue in Cleveland, Columbus, maybe parts of Cincinnati, but red everywhere else.
Next year will be the last election where the present system of redistricting is in place. And there's a new system that is rather complicated to explain, but gives the Democrats, or the party out of power, more voice, more influence in trying to redraw things. So I think when all is said and done, Ohio will get maybe a little bit more balance. You won't have districts drawn so that you have
that looks like a fish hook.
Yeah, like that.
There's
the
some
snake
pretty
along the
creative
lake.
shapes in there.
But I mean that you won't have an imbalance of 12 districts virtually guaranteed Republicans and all the Democrats shoehorned and jammed into 4 districts. You'll see some more balance, I think, after next year.
Election season, I mean, we have, what, 363 days until we do this for real presidential-wise, but I just get the feeling, Tom, it's going to be a nonstop go, between now, primary day, and then when we start talking in the fall.
The country is going to, for the first time, try to absorb and understand simultaneously a still confusing campaign because the Democrats don't have a message or a messenger. They can't decide whether they are middle of the road or ultra progressive, borderline socialist far out there. And so until that gets decided, the Republicans are going to have a wonderful advantage in terms of organizing and staffing and raising money, working very much to the president's advantage.
Well, not to mention the issue that's gripping the nation right now is this impeachment inquiry as well. So that's a major factor.
First time ever you're going to have this going on simultaneously, so it's a 2-ring circus at least, and just be, as somebody who has more time to just be a watcher of the media and not a day in, day out reporter, it's exhausting just to try to keep up with what's happening, as you well know.
I promise we won't hold you to this, but if you had to handicap who the Democratic nominee will be in 2020 for president to go up against President Trump, right now, who's your leader in the clubhouse?
Well, and again, that's saying right now,
right?
With
Yeah,
knowing
that's
that
right.
there are 6 more debates.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And light years in political terms, of more developments. I could just go by the snapshot today that has Biden as the most familiar and appealing to the old guard Democrats. But I say that with no slam dunk certainty. Nope. You're just asking me for.
I'm just asking you on November 5th.
A decision of the moment.
Yes.
If the choice were made today, I think that would be the choice. But there's a lot of miles to play out here.
Absolutely, my friend. It's always great to have you up here. Thanks for coming down.
Honored to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Tom. And thank you all for joining us here on our live election results coverage. Keep an eye on WKYC.com/elections for results throughout the rest of the night. And make sure you catch the 11 p.m. What's Next broadcast. You can catch that on Channel 3 as well, streaming live on WKYC.com. Thanks for joining us.